Picture this: a tiny island in the middle of the Mediterranean, no bigger than a speck on the map, yet holding secrets so profound they defy explanation. Malta, a place where the past whispers through towering stone walls older than the pyramids of Egypt, where every corner hides a mystery carved into the earth itself. From above, the island unfolds like an ancient puzzle, a labyrinth of megalithic temples, hidden chambers, and structures so precisely aligned with the stars that they couldn't possibly be the work of chance. Who built these monuments? How did they achieve such precision thousands of years before modern tools? And why does Malta, of all places, hold so many unanswered questions? For centuries, this island has been a crossroads of civilizations. Phoenicians, Romans, knights, and empires have all left their mark, but the oldest and most baffling traces belong to a people whose names we don't even know. Their temples, buried underground complexes, and eerie cart ruts carved into solid stone stretch across the landscape like silent messages from a forgotten world. These aren't just ruins, they're enigmas that challenge everything we think we know about ancient technology and human ingenuity. Some of these structures are so old, they predate recorded history itself, leaving archaeologists scratching their heads and visitors standing in awe. Today, we're going on a journey to uncover 25 of Malta's most unexplained structures, each one a piece of a puzzle that might never be fully solved. We'll wander through temples where sound behaves in inexplicable ways, descend into Hypogeum where the walls seem to hum with ancient energy, and stare up at stone altars that might have been used for rituals we can barely comprehend. This isn't just a tour of old rocks, it's an exploration of the impossible, a dive into a past that refuses to stay buried. So if you've ever wondered what secrets lie beneath the sun-baked soil of Malta, or why this island feels like a place out of time, stick around. By the end, you'll see why these mysteries have captivated historians, scientists, and dreamers for generations, and why they might just rewrite history as we know it. Standing tall on the island of Gozo, just a short ferry ride from Malta, the Ġgantija Temples rise from the earth like the remnants of a forgotten giant's playground. Built over 5,500 years ago, these two colossal structures hold the title of the oldest free-standing buildings on the planet, older than Stonehenge, older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The name Ġgantija with Ġgantija means giant's tower in Maltese, and when you stand beneath these walls of massive limestone slabs, some weighing over 50 tons, it's easy to see why ancient legends whispered that only giants could have moved them. The precision of the construction is staggering. Without metal tools or wheels, the builders carved, transported, and stacked these stones with such accuracy that even after millennia, the walls still fit snugly together. The temples curve into graceful apses, their doorways aligned with celestial events like the summer solstice sunrise. But who were these master builders? Archaeologists believe the site was dedicated to a fertility goddess, evidenced by the countless figurines of voluptuous women found nearby, symbols of life and abundance in a world where survival was anything but guaranteed. One of the most haunting features is the so-called oracle hole, a small niche in the stone where priests or priestesses might have spoken in echoing, godlike voices to worshippers. The acoustics here are uncanny. Whispers bounce off the walls in strange, amplified ways, suggesting rituals where sound itself was sacred. Some researchers even think the temples functioned as resonating chambers, their curves designed to manipulate vibrations in ways we're only beginning to understand. What's truly humbling is realizing how much we don't know. These temples predate writing, predate recorded history. The people who built them left no manuals, no blueprints, just these silent, towering questions in stone. Walking through Ġgantija, you can't shake the feeling that every slab, every carving, is a fragment of a language we've yet to decipher. And that's just the first stop on our journey through Malta's mysteries. The mystery of Ġgantija isn't just in its age, it's in the how. Imagine lifting a 50-ton limestone block, not with cranes or hydraulics, but with bare hands, ropes, and sheer ingenuity. These temple builders had no wheels, no pulleys, no metal tools, just wooden sledges, rounded stones for rollers, and an intimate knowledge of physics that still baffles engineers today. The grooves and cart ruts etched into Malta's bedrock nearby might hold clues. Some researchers argue these parallel channels, worn inches deep into the stone, were used to transport massive slabs, dragging them on greased sledges across the island's rugged terrain. Others propose the ruts were part of a broader, forgotten system, ancient roads linking quarries to sacred sites, their purpose lost to time. Then there's the enigma of the elongated skulls. During excavations, a handful of these strangely shaped crania were unearthed near Ġgantija, sparking theories that range from the scientific to the sensational. Were they the result of deliberate head binding, a ritual practice seen in other ancient cultures to signify status or spirituality? Or could they point to something even more unsettling, an isolated group with distinct genetic traits, perhaps even a priestly class who guarded the temple's secrets? What's undeniable is the precision behind every choice. The builders selected Globigerina limestone for its workability, reserving harder coralline stone for load-bearing walls. They packed rubble and soil between temple tiers to absorb earthquakes, a stroke of engineering brilliance that kept these structures standing for millennia. And they arranged the entire complex to mirror the cycles of the cosmos, aligning doorways with solstices and equinoxes like a colossal stone calendar. Standing in the shadow of Ġgantija, you're left with more questions than answers. How did a Neolithic society, without written language or advanced machinery, conceptualize and execute such a masterpiece? Were they guided by forgotten knowledge or something even older, an inherited wisdom from a civilization we've yet to discover? The stones aren't talking, but their silence speaks volumes. Beneath the modern streets of Malta, lies a labyrinth that defies imagination. The Hypogeum of Ħal-Saflieni, a 3-level subterranean necropolis carved entirely by hand into solid limestone over 5,000 years ago. This isn't just a burial site, it's an underground cathedral, a whispering gallery of the dead, where the very walls seem to pulse with the echoes of ancient rituals. Descending into its shadowy chambers feels like stepping into another world, one where sound bends, light fades, and the boundary between the living and the ancestral blurs. The most mesmerizing space is the so-called oracle chamber, a small, oval room with a haunting acoustic phenomenon. Speak here in a certain tone, and your voice resonates through the entire hypogeum, vibrating the stone with an otherworldly hum. Researchers have found that the chamber's resonant frequency, around 110 Hz, matches the pitch known to induce trance states in humans, altering brain activity and creating sensations of transcendence. Was this intentional? The walls, painted in faded red ochre swirls, suggest ceremonies where sound and sight merged into something sacred. Priests or shamans might have used this space to channel voices from beyond, their words amplified into what worshippers believed were messages from the gods or the ancestors themselves. Then there are the bones. 7,000 skeletons were excavated here, a silent congregation of the dead, many with skulls that defy explanation, elongated, misshapen, some lacking the median sagittal suture, a cranial feature universal to Homo sapiens. Forensic experts can't agree on why. Some suggest ritual head binding, a practice seen in cultures from Egypt to Peru. Others point to genetic anomalies or even the remnants of an isolated population with distinct physiological traits. But the most unsettling theory, that these skulls belong to a priestly caste, individuals set apart by birth or ritual to guard the hypogeum's secrets. The artistry here is as precise as it is mysterious. Carved shelves mimic the doorways of above-ground temples, as if the builders were recreating the world of the living for the dead. One chamber, the Holy of Holies, mirrors the facade of Ġgantija above Ġgantija, complete with false windows and a threshold that aligns with the winter solstice sunrise. Every detail whispers purpose. Every corridor feels designed not just for burial, but for something far more profound. What chills the spine is the realization that the Hypogeum wasn't just a tomb. It was a theater of the unseen, a place where the living came to commune with forces we've long forgotten. Standing in the oracle chamber with its eerie acoustics and faded paintings, you can almost hear the ghost of a chant, a prayer, a voice insisting that some truths are buried too deep to ever fully uncover. And this is only the second stop on our journey through Malta's enigmas. The Hypogeum holds one last, chilling secret: the unexplained disappearance of its most baffling artifacts. When archaeologists first cracked open its chambers in the early 1900s, they catalogued thousands of skeletal remains, including those enigmatic elongated skulls. Yet within decades, most had vanished from museum records, leaving behind only sketches and vague references. Even Lady Hilda Megalithic, the wife of Malta's lieutenant governor, reportedly kept one of the skulls under glass in her private collection before it, too, disappeared, fueling whispers of a deliberate cover-up. Some speculate colonial authorities shipped them to London, where they were lost or hidden. Others insist local clergy, alarmed by their unearthly appearance, quietly destroyed them. Then there's the missing second level. Initial excavation reports mention a deeper fourth tier, an uncharted labyrinth sealed off by collapsed rubble. Divers probing underwater passages nearby found tunnels eerily similar to the Hypogeum's design, suggesting the complex might stretch far beyond what's mapped. When workers attempted to clear the debris in the 1990s, dangerous levels of carbon dioxide began seeping through fissures, forcing authorities to close the site for years. Experts blamed underground gas pockets, but conspiracists pointed to something stranger: folklore warnings of Il-Haqiqa, reptilian beings said to lurk beneath Malta, guarding ancient knowledge. Maltese legends tell of serpent-eyed figures emerging from the earth, their hissing voices echoing through the Hypogeum's chambers. Could these tales be fractured memories of a forgotten priestly caste, or something more unsettling? The truth may lie buried deeper than the missing skulls, in tunnels we're no longer permitted to explore. What remains is a whisper of history, a sense that the Hypogeum still guards its greatest secrets behind walls we were never meant to breach. And if that thought sends a shiver down your spine, just wait. The island's mysteries only grow stranger from here. Just a few miles from the Hypogeum, the Ġgantija Temples rise from the earth like a Neolithic storybook, their weathered stones whispering tales of sacrifice, celestial worship, and a goddess whose identity still divides scholars. Built between 3,600 and 2,500 BCE, this complex is Malta's largest prehistoric site, a sprawling maze of altars, passageways, and chambers adorned with spiral carvings so intricate they seem to pulse with hidden meaning. The most haunting of these symbols coil across massive stone blocks like frozen whirlpools, echoing patterns found as far away as Newgrange in Ireland and the temples of Crete. Were they maps of the cosmos, representations of the cycle of life and death, or perhaps even ancient sound waves, a visual echo of the Hypogeum's resonant chambers? At the heart of the complex stands an altar that chills the blood. Its surface is pocked with circular depressions, stained dark by millennia of offerings. Excavators found flint knives nearby, their edges still sharp, alongside the bones of cattle, sheep, and goats, evidence of ritual slaughter. But the most provocative discovery: a stone vessel filled with burnt animal fat, suggesting ceremonies where fire and flesh mingled under the watchful eyes of the gods. The alignment here is no accident. During the summer solstice, sunlight pierces the temple doorway, striking the central altar with surgical precision, as if marking a date on some sacred calendar. Then there are the statues. Towering over the ruins is the so-called Fat Lady, a headless figure with voluptuous curves, her pleated skirt cascading like rippling water. Some insist she's a fertility goddess, a symbol of abundance in a world where survival hinged on the earth's generosity. Others argue these figures depict ancestor spirits, revered matriarchs who mediated between the living and the divine. The truth might lie in the details. One statue's feet are carved to resemble tree roots, as if she's growing from the earth itself, a literal embodiment of the land's life force. But the Tarxian temples guard their secrets jealously. The spiral carvings, so alike to those in distant lands, hint at a shared cultural language lost to time. The altars, stained with sacrifice, suggest a religion steeped in both reverence and blood. And those headless statues, their identities as fragmented as the history they inhabit, stand as silent sentinels to a world we'll never fully understand. What's clear is this: in Malta, every stone is a riddle, and every riddle leads deeper into the dark. At the southern edge of Malta, where limestone cliffs meet the endless blue of the Mediterranean, the Mnajdra temples cling to the landscape like a stone sundial forgotten by time. Built over 5,000 years ago, this complex is more than just a place of worship, it's a celestial machine. The lower temple, with its precise alignments to the equinoxes and solstices, functions with such accuracy that modern researchers initially doubted Neolithic builders could have achieved it without advanced tools. Yet here it stands, a testament to a sophistication we're still struggling to comprehend. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, something extraordinary happens. As dawn breaks, a razor-thin beam of sunlight slices through the temple's main doorway, striking a specific stone slab inside. Moments later, light pours through a small hole in the wall, illuminating a carved spiral on the opposite side, a symbol found repeated across Malta's ancient sites. This isn't random. The entire structure was engineered to mark these pivotal moments in the solar year, tracking the heavens with near mathematical precision. But why? Some argue it was purely practical, a calendar to guide planting and harvest, essential for survival on an island with limited resources. Others see deeper ritual significance, a bridge between earth and sky where priests communed with cosmic forces. The mystery deepens when you examine the temple's construction. The builders used two types of limestone: hard, weather-resistant coralline for the exterior, and softer globigerina for the intricate inner carvings. They even accounted for optical illusion, angling walls so sunlight would appear undistorted as it traveled through the chamber. This level of foresight suggests a society with advanced astronomical knowledge that seemingly vanished without a trace. Then there's the darker chapter in Mnajdra's story. In 2000, vandals toppled nearly 60 megaliths, shattering stones that had stood undisturbed for millennia. The attack was so severe, it prompted authorities to enclose the site under a protective canopy, a necessary shield, yet one that unintentionally muffled the temple's original acoustics, silencing whispers that once echoed off its walls. Standing in the lower temple at dawn on an equinox, watching sunlight trace its ancient path, you're left with a haunting thought. Whoever built Mnajdra didn't just observe the stars, they spoke their language. And somewhere in these silent stones, that conversation still waits to be heard. Perched on a windswept plateau overlooking Malta's southern coast, the Temple of Hagar Qim holds a secret written in sunlight. Unlike most Neolithic temples which face southeast to greet the rising sun, this one defies convention with its north-facing entrance, a choice that seemed inexplicable until researchers noticed something extraordinary. Every 18.6 years, during a rare lunar standstill, the moon's glow floods through this doorway, illuminating the innermost chambers with an eerie silver light. But the real spectacle comes during solar eclipses. On April 8, 2027, a total eclipse will trace a path directly over Hagar Qim, just as it likely did when the temple was built 5,000 years ago. The alignment is too precise to be coincidence. The builders didn't just track the sun and moon, they wove celestial drama into the very bones of their sacred space. At the heart of the temple lies another enigma, the headless, fat lady statue, her curvaceous form echoing those found at Tarxion. Her missing head has fueled speculation for centuries. Some believe it was deliberately removed to deactivate her power when the temple was abandoned. Others point to Christian invaders smashing pagan idols. But the most intriguing theory comes from her posture. She sits on a throne-like chair, her hands resting on her hips in what scholars recognize as a birthing position. Could she represent a mother goddess overseeing cycles of life, death, and rebirth mirrored in the eclipses' temporary death of the sun? A short walk from Hagar Qim, the so-called Miskar tanks, deepen the mystery. These 16 rectangular pits carved into bedrock hold water year-round despite Malta's arid climate. Their purpose remains hotly debated. Were they ritual baths for purification before temple rites, reservoirs for a society dependent on seasonal rains, or perhaps something more celestial, reflecting pools to capture the moon's glow during those rare standstills? The tank's alignment with the temples suggests they weren't merely practical. Like the eclipse alignments, they hint at a world where water, stone, and sky were threads in the same sacred tapestry. What chills the spine is realizing how little we truly grasp. These builders didn't just observe nature, they conversed with it, embedding their temples with codes we're only beginning to crack. When that eclipse darkens Hagar Qim in 2027, it won't just be a celestial event. It'll be a whisper across millennia, a reminder that some dialogues never truly end. Scattered across Malta like the ghostly tracks of a civilization lost in time, the Clapham Junction cart ruts defy logic, a sprawling network of over 1,000 parallel grooves etched deep into the island's limestone bedrock. Some run straight as arrows for hundreds of feet before vanishing into cliffs or plunging beneath the sea. Others twist into impossible knots, intersecting at bewildering angles that rule out any simple explanation. Named after London's chaotic railway hub by British soldiers who thought the patterns resembled train tracks, these ruts are anything but modern. Dating back at least 4,000 years, they were carved by someone or something long before wheels or metal tools arrived on the island. The most obvious theory is practicality. Archaeologists note that the ruts often connect quarries to temple sites, suggesting they were used to transport massive stone blocks on wooden sledges. The groove's consistent width, about 4.5 inches apart, matches the axle span of known ancient carts. But here's the catch. Many ruts zigzag up steep inclines where dragging heavy loads would be nonsensical, and some dead end abruptly at cliff edges, as if the drivers simply vanished mid-journey. Others dive underwater, continuing across the seafloor for miles, implying either a dramatic shift in Malta's coastline or a purpose we've yet to fathom. Then there's the energy hypothesis. Dowsers and paranormal researchers claim the ruts align with geomagnetic ley lines, pulsing with measurable electromagnetic anomalies. Some grooves intersect at sacred sites like Mnajdra, forming a network that mirrors constellations or Earth energy grids. Skeptics scoff, but local folklore speaks of Ilmogdaja Tal-Huti, the path of the fish, a legend about glowing streaks in the bedrock that guided fishermen home during storms. Could these tales hint at some forgotten technology, a system that channeled energy or even light? The truth might lie in the stones themselves. Microscopic analysis reveals the grooves weren't worn down gradually by friction. Instead, they were deliberately chiseled, their walls unnaturally smooth, as if melted or cut with precision tools. Some show signs of vitrification, a glass-like hardening caused by extreme heat. This has sparked wild but unproven theories. Were the ruts made by plasma discharges, ancient machinery, or even celestial events like meteor strikes? Standing at Clapham Junction, tracing your fingers over these enigmatic lines, it's hard not to feel the weight of the unsolved. Whether they're the scars of Bronze Age labor, the remnants of a lost energy grid, or something far stranger, one thing is clear: Malta's cart ruts are more than just marks in stone. They're a language without a key, a puzzle where every answer only leads to deeper questions. Nestled between the Mnajdra Temples and the sheer cliffs of Malta's southern coast, the Miskar tanks cut into the limestone like scars from an ancient ritual. These 16 rectangular pits, each roughly 6 feet deep, are eerily precise, their edges sharp, their walls smooth, with no visible chisel marks to hint at how they were carved. Even more perplexing is how they hold water year-round, fed by some hidden underground source despite Malta's punishing droughts. For a civilization that depended on seasonal rains, these tanks weren't just practical, they were lifelines. But their placement tells a stranger story. A stone's throw away lies a cluster of so-called silent caves, natural fissures where sound behaves unnaturally. Whispers vanish midair, while certain frequencies resonate with unsettling clarity. It's as if the caves and the Miskar tanks exist in dialogue, one swallowing sound, the other holding water, both defying expectation. Archaeologists debate whether the tanks stored drinking water for temple workers or served a sacred purpose. The absence of tool marks fuels speculation. Were they shaped by some lost technique, or even by the acidic properties of Malta's groundwater dissolving the rock over centuries? Then there's the alignment. The tanks mirror the solstice alignments of Mnajdra, as if mirroring celestial patterns in liquid form. Local legends speak of moonlight ceremonies where priests dipped ceremonial blades into the tanks, infusing the water with lunar energy. Modern dowsers claim the site pulses with unusual electromagnetic activity, strongest at dawn on the equinoxes. Whether reservoir or ritual site, the Miskar tanks guard their secrets as tightly as they hold water, silent, still, and deeper than they appear. Standing at their edge, watching the breeze ripple the dark surface, you realize this isn't just about survival. It's about symbiosis, a civilization that didn't just endure Malta's harsh landscape, but wove it into their worship. The real mystery isn't how they built these tanks, but what they believed flowed beneath them. High on a hill overlooking Malta's Marsekslock Bay, the ruins of Borg in Nadjor stand as silent witnesses to a forgotten chapter of violence and myth. Unlike the island's other temples, this site carries a grim distinction. It's the only one fortified with massive defensive walls, some sections still towering over 10 feet tall. Built during the Bronze Age around 2500 BCE, these aren't mere boundaries, they're barricades with strategically placed gaps suggesting archers once defended this sacred space. But from what? The answer might lie beneath the soil. Thick layers of ash and charred debris paint a picture of catastrophe. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of a sudden, fiery destruction, with pottery shattered mid-use and bones scattered in chaotic clusters. This wasn't abandonment, this was a massacre. The temple's layout only deepens the mystery. Its entrance faces southeast, mirroring older Neolithic designs, but its interior is divided into unusual, claustrophobic chambers, spaces that feel more like bunkers than places of worship. One recess holds a stone slab scored with deep grooves, possibly used for sharpening weapons. Nearby, a niche contains a cache of sling stones, smooth and lethal, waiting millennia for a battle that never came. Who were these people so desperate to defend their holy site? Were they guarding against invaders or something closer to home, a civil war, a rebellion, or even a purge of their own priests? Local folklore offers a haunting parallel. Just offshore lies the tiny island of Filfla, which ancient Greeks called Ġgantija, the mythical home of the nymph Calypso from Homer's Odyssey. In the epic, Calypso imprisons Odysseus in a cave for 7 years, her island a beautiful prison shrouded in mist. But Maltese tradition twists the tale. They say Calypso didn't weep when Odysseus left. She screamed. Some versions describe her island as a place of punishment where wayward sailors were sacrificed to the sea. Could this legend be a distorted memory of Borg in Nadjor's final days, a last stand by a people who worshipped a vengeful goddess? The truth may be written in the stones themselves. The defensive walls incorporate blocks from older temples, looted and repurposed in haste. The ash layers contain not just wood but burnt olive branches, a sacred tree linked to Mediterranean purification rites. Was this a failed exorcism, a ritual gone horribly wrong, or did attackers torch the temple to sever its spiritual power? Standing here, staring at those soot-blackened stones, you realize some fires don't just destroy. They erase, and in Malta, where history and myth blur like smoke on the horizon, the line between guardian and monster depends on who tells the tale. Found broken into 5 pieces and half lost to time, the Tal Kadi Sky Stone is Malta's most tantalizing celestial riddle, a slab of limestone etched with what appears to be a star map, its surface scarred by lines and dots that might chart the heavens as they appeared over 5,000 years ago. Discovered in the ruins of a temple near Salina Bay, the stone's surviving fragments show a crescent moon, a circle that could represent the sun or full moon, and clusters of markings some researchers believe correspond to constellations like Orion or Pleiades. But here's the twist: the carvings don't match our modern star charts. They're offset, as if recording the night sky from a different epoch or an entirely forgotten cosmology. One school of thought insists this was a practical tool, a farmer's almanac carved in stone. The markings might track lunar phases to predict planting seasons or monsoon winds crucial for an island dependent on agriculture and fishing. The crescent could symbolize the first visible moon of each cycle, while the dots chart its journey across the sky. Skeptics counter that the patterns are too irregular for precise timekeeping, pointing to similar star maps in other cultures that turned out to be abstract art or ritual symbols. Then there's the sacred interpretation. The temple where it was found aligns with sunrise on the summer solstice, suggesting the stone might have been an altarpiece for sky-worshipping priests. The broken state fuels speculation. Was it shattered intentionally to release its power, or did invaders destroy it to sever a link between the Maltese and their gods? Some even propose the carvings depict a specific celestial event, like a supernova or comet, immortalized as a divine omen. The most haunting theory comes from astrophysicists. Using software to model prehistoric skies, they've found that the markings loosely align with how certain stars would have appeared from Malta around 3000 BCE, but only if the observer was tracking them over decades, noting subtle shifts caused by Earth's wobbling axis. Could the Tal Kadi stone record an ancient discovery of precession, the slow drift of constellations over centuries? If so, it would mean these temple builders understood cosmic cycles modern science didn't grasp until the time of Hipparchus 2,000 years later. Standing before this fractured relic, you're left with a profound question. Were these carvings a farmer's calendar, a priest's holy script, or something far more astonishing, a Stone Age astronomer's notebook, preserving secrets we're only now beginning to decode? The truth, like the missing fragments of the slab itself, might always hover just out of reach. Beneath the quiet fields of Zagra, hidden from the sun for millennia, lies a chamber where the dead were laid to rest in pieces. The Zagra stone circle, once a Neolithic temple above ground, became a subterranean ossuary, a place where bones were stacked, sorted, and arranged with unsettling precision. Excavations revealed over 200,000 fragments, a jigsaw puzzle of human remains where skulls were grouped together in one niche, long bones in another, as if following some macabre filing system. But it's not just the dismemberment that chills the blood. Here, the dead weren't merely buried, they were curated. One grave stands out like a scream in the dark, the double fetus burial. 2 tiny skeletons, perhaps 30 weeks gestational age, were placed side by side in a niche lined with red ochre, their fragile bones adorned with carved stone beads. The positioning suggests ceremony, not tragedy. Were they stillborn twins offered to some ancient deity? or the result of a ritual sacrifice meant to ensure fertility or ward off famine. The ochre, a pigment linked to rebirth across prehistoric Europe, hints at a belief that these infants' journey didn't end in that dark chamber. Perhaps they were seen as messengers carried into the afterlife to plead for the living. Parallels in Sardinia's Hypogeum of Ħal-Saflieni send shivers down the spine. There, in eerily similar rock-cut tombs, archaeologists found fetal remains placed near oracle holes, small openings where priests may have channeled voices from beyond. Both cultures practiced excarnation, exposing corpses to the elements before gathering bones for secondary burial. Both arranged skulls in circles as if the dead were locked in eternal conversation. But the Sardinians went further, drilling holes in craniums, possibly to release spirits or siphon knowledge from the departed. Did these practices spring from a shared belief system carried across the Mediterranean by Neolithic seafarers, or was there something universal in the way certain ancient cultures bridged the gap between life and death? The Zagros Circle's most haunting revelation isn't in the bones themselves, but in what's missing. While adult skeletons show signs of arthritis and hard labor, the children's remains are conspicuously few save for those fetal burials. Was infant mortality so rare in this society, or were most children laid to rest elsewhere, deemed unworthy of the ossuary's grim honor? The answer might lie in the temple's alignment. Like Mnajdra and Hagar Qim, the original above-ground structure was built to channel solstice light. At dawn on the longest day, sunlight would have pierced the entrance, striking an altar stone now lost to time. Perhaps only those who died during sacred intervals or under ominous signs earned a place in the bone chambers below. Standing in that silent labyrinth of rearranged skeletons, you realize this wasn't just a tomb. It was a library of the dead, each bone a volume in some lost spiritual text. And somewhere in the ochre-stained earth, between those tiny beads and the hollows where skulls once stared blindly upward, the truth whispers not just about how these people died, but how they longed to be remembered. The Ġgantija Temples rise from Malta's northwest like a whispering ruin, their most chilling secret hidden beneath the feet of those who walk their ancient halls. Here, the floors aren't just stone, they're stained a deep, unsettling red, paved with ochre that still burns vivid after 5,000 years. This wasn't mere decoration. Ochre, iron-rich and clay-like, was a sacred substance across the Neolithic world, often symbolizing blood, life, and the boundary between worlds. At Ġgantija, it coats the floors in thick layers, as if the very earth was sanctified by ritual. Archaeologists lifting these slabs found something even more disturbing. Hidden beneath them, deposits of animal bones, sheep, goats, and cattle, all charred as if consumed in sacrificial fires. The message is clear. This was a place where the earth drank offerings, where every step echoed with the memory of flames and spilled life. At the heart of the complex lies an enigma, the so-called Shrine of the Dove. A small, circular niche lined with yet more ochre, its walls bear the faint imprint of wings, carved so delicately they seem to flutter in torchlight. Excavators found no bird bones here, but something far more curious. Tiny clay figurines of doves, their beaks open mid-coup, placed deliberately facing the sunrise. In ancient Mediterranean cultures, doves were messengers of goddesses, symbols of both peace and the soul's flight. But in Malta, where temples aligned with solstices and hypogeum hummed with sacred sound, their presence hints at something deeper. Some researchers believe these figurines were vessels for prayers, their hollow bodies perhaps once holding offerings, grain, oil, or even drops of blood meant to carry pleas skyward. Then comes the Great Silence. Around 2500 BCE, Ġgantija's rituals ceased abruptly. No invasion layers, no signs of quake or famine, just an eerie stillness, as if the temple's keepers simply walked away. The ochre floors were left uncovered, the shrine's doves abandoned mid-flight. This wasn't isolated. Across Malta, temple culture collapsed within centuries, leaving no clear successor. Some theories point to climate shifts, a prolonged drought that turned fertile land barren. Others suggest a spiritual crisis, the fracturing of a belief system that could no longer sustain its people. But the most haunting clue lies in those red floors. Soil samples reveal traces of ergot, a toxic fungus that grows on grain and causes hallucinations. Was Scorba's final act a desperate ritual gone wrong? A ceremony where the veil between worlds tore too wide? The temple doesn't answer. It only holds its breath, its floors still red as a wound that never quite heals. Today, the sleepy seaside town of Bugibba gives little hint of the ancient marvel that once stood on its shores. But hidden beneath the pavement of modern roads and the foundations of hotels lies a haunting truth. This resort town was built, quite literally, from the bones of a sacred temple. In the 1700s, when Malta was under the rule of the Knights of St. John, workers systematically dismantled the prehistoric Bugibba temple, carting away its megalithic stones to use as filler material for new coastal roads. The destruction was so thorough that only a single weathered upright slab remains, jutting from the ground like a broken tooth, all that's left of what may have been one of the island's most striking celestial observatories. A handful of rare sketches by 18th-century antiquarians offer fleeting glimpses of what was lost. One drawing, attributed to French architect Charles-François de Mondian, shows a horseshoe-shaped structure with a massive trilithon entrance, its stones adorned with spiral carvings eerily similar to those at Tarxian. Another, by Maltese scholar Giovanni Francesco Abela, depicts a central corridor aligned with the summer solstice sunrise, its walls perforated with window stones that would have funneled light into the inner chambers at precise angles. These fragments suggest Bugibba wasn't just another temple, it was a sophisticated instrument designed to harness the sun's movements with unnerving accuracy. But it's the local folklore that chills the blood. For generations, fishermen whispered about the curse of Bugibba, claiming that men who hauled away the temple stones met strange fates, sinking boats, sudden fevers, or vanishing into the mist-shrouded night. One particularly grim tale tells of a laborer named Tony who pocketed a carved stone fragment as a souvenir. By dawn, he was found dead on the beach, his mouth filled with seawater though the tide was out, the stolen rock clutched in his hand. Whether superstition or suppressed memory, these stories hint at a deeper truth. The temple's destruction wasn't just vandalism, it was a severing of something sacred. Modern ground-penetrating radar reveals tantalizing clues. Beneath Bugibba's bustling promenade, the footprint of the original structure extends far beyond the remaining upright slab, its foundations tracing a series of concentric circles, a design unique among Malta's temples. Some researchers believe these rings functioned as an ancient seismograph, their alignment sensitive to tremors in the earth. Others argue they formed a resonance chamber, amplifying chants or drumbeats during rituals. We may never know for certain. What lingers is the uncanny feeling that every stroll along Bugibba's sunny waterfront walks over a silenced hymn, the stones beneath our feet still humming with the echoes of a song we'll never hear. On the outskirts of Malta's Grand Harbour, where modern warehouses now cluster, the ghostly footprint of the Cordon temples lingers, a trio of sacred complexes reduced to whispers in the earth. Only one of these sites, Cordon Roman III, survives in fragments, its scattered stones hinting at a grandeur we can only piece together through the hurried sketches of 19th-century archaeologists. Among them, the meticulous notes of Sir Themistocle's Zamet stand out, pages yellowed with age, detailing a circular courtyard flanked by towering megaliths, their surfaces pocked with peculiar hemispherical depressions. These libation holes, as Zamet called them, stud the temple's threshold like a constellation of tiny craters, their purpose as enigmatic as the hands that carved them. The holes tell a story of ritual. Each is precisely angled, their shallow bowls designed to hold liquid without spillage. Excavators found traces of oxidized metal and animal fats in their curves, suggesting offerings of blood, wine, or sacred oils poured to consecrate the space. But the most haunting detail, their alignment. The holes cluster along pathways leading to the temple's central chamber, a route mirrored in the surviving designs of Hagar Qim and Mnajdra. This wasn't random. It points to a shared ritual language, a ceremonial choreography where every step, every poured offering was part of a larger cosmic dialogue. Zamet's sketches reveal something even more provocative. The lost Cordon I and Roman II complexes, though now buried beneath roads and buildings, once formed a perfect triangle with Cordon Roman III, their positions aligning with the rising of certain stars. Modern LiDAR scans confirm the pattern, a network of temples placed not just for land but for sky. Some researchers argue these sites functioned as a Neolithic GPS, their alignments guiding sailors or processions between sacred nodes. Others see them as amplifiers points in a vibrational grid designed to channel Earth energies or celestial harmonies. The libation holes might hold the key. Similar depressions appear in Sicily's Monte Babonia tombs and Sardinia's Nuragic wells, always near water or beneath open sky. Were they receivers catching rainwater as celestial blessings? Or portals linking offerings to the underworld? At Cordon, their placement suggests both. The temple's courtyard was once paved with porous limestone, designed to let liquid seep into the earth, a literal merging of heaven and soil. What remains is the ache of loss. Cordon's temples were dismantled for building material, their stones repurposed for docks and fortresses. Yet even in their absence, they whisper of an island-wide communion, a time when every hill and harbor was stitched together by sacred geometry. Standing here now, where asphalt covers ancient altars, you can almost hear the echo of chants, the slow drip of offerings into stone, a language of devotion written in earth and sky waiting to be read. Tucked away in the quiet village of Emgar, the Ġgantija Temples might lack the colossal scale of Ġgantija above Ġgantija or the celestial precision of Mnajdra, but what they lack in size they make up for in mystery. Among the ruins, archaeologists uncovered a series of miniature stone models, each a perfect replica of the temples themselves, carved with such precision they could pass for blueprints. The largest is no bigger than a loaf of bread, yet every doorway, every curve of the apse is meticulously rendered. Were these sacred objects used to guide the construction of the real temples? Or something far more personal, toys for children, perhaps, or votive offerings left by worshippers seeking favor from the gods? The models aren't the only puzzle here. Scattered among them are tiny stone carvings of what appear to be ears of corn, an impossible detail, since maize wasn't cultivated in Europe until thousands of years after these temples were built. The obvious explanation is that they represent wheat or barley, staples of the Neolithic Maltese diet. But look closer, the kernels are too large, too evenly spaced, their husks too distinct. Some researchers propose they depict a now extinct grain, while others wonder if they're stylized symbols of fertility meant to invoke abundance, the most tantalizing theory. That they're not plants at all, but abstract representations of sound waves echoing the acoustic anomalies found in Malta's larger temples, where whispers twist into echoes and chambers hum at specific frequencies. Ġgantijah's smallest artifacts might hold the key to its grandest questions. Unlike the island's other temples, this complex wasn't rebuilt or expanded over centuries. It was used, then abandoned, as if its purpose was fulfilled in a single generational act. The miniature models, found carefully placed near the entrance, suggest a culture deeply invested in symbolism, where the act of creation, whether full-scale or in replica, held profound spiritual weight. And those corn-like carvings, they cluster near a niche where offerings of real grain were found, charred and preserved in the dry earth. Standing in the shadow of Ġgantijah's weathered stones, it's hard not to feel the intimacy of this place. Unlike the imposing grandeur of Hagar Qim or the labyrinthine depths of the Hypogeum, this temple feels human-scaled, its mysteries whispered rather than shouted. Maybe the models were teaching tools used to pass down sacred geometry to apprentices. Maybe the corn was part of a harvest ritual, its stone versions planted in the earth to ensure real crops would follow. Or maybe, like so much of Malta's prehistoric past, these artifacts are fragments of a language we've forgotten how to speak, one where every tiny stone carries the weight of a world we'll never fully see. Beneath the winding streets of Rabat lies a labyrinth where two faiths whisper to each other through the stones. St. Paul's catacombs are not just a burial site, they're a palimpsest of belief, where Roman paganism and early Christianity intertwine in the dark. The walls here tell a story of cultural collision. One alcove might hold a fresco of the Good Shepherd, his lamb cradled tenderly, while the next features a carved laurel wreath, an unmistakable symbol of Roman victory in death. The most striking fusion, a chamber where early Christians repurposed a pagan tomb, scrubbing away images of Bacchus to etch crosses into the soft limestone, as if rewriting eternity itself. Among these shadowy corridors, one legend looms larger than the rest: the stolen, talking head. This small marble relic, said to depict St. Paul, was believed to utter prophecies when questioned by the faithful. Pilgrims would press their lips to its cold mouth, whispering pleas for guidance, and claim to hear answers echoing in the catacombs' damp air. The head vanished in the 1700s, likely looted by a collector, but locals still speak of its voice lingering underground, a ghostly murmur beneath the modern city. Then there's the cult of St. Agatha, the Sicilian martyr who, according to tradition, sought refuge in these tunnels during Roman persecutions. A narrow side passage leads to an underground chapel where her name is scrawled in red ochre, alongside early Christian graffiti fish symbols, Alpha and Omega monograms, and prayers so ancient the language has faded into the stone. What chills the spine isn't just the blending of faiths, but the urgency of these markings. The fish wasn't merely a symbol, it was a covert signal, a way for hunted Christians to identify safe spaces in a world where declaring allegiance could mean death. The catacombs' true power lies in their contradictions. In one niche, a Roman sarcophagus sits undisturbed, its lid carved with scenes of pagan revelry. Just inches away, the wall bears the imprint of countless fingers, early Christians tracing crosses into the soft rock as they passed, leaving grooves so deep they've outlasted empires. This wasn't just coexistence, it was conversation, a negotiation between old gods and new, etched into the very bones of the earth. Standing in the flicker of a detour light, you realize these tunnels aren't just a relic of the past. They're a mirror, the same questions that haunted those who carved these walls: how to honor tradition while embracing change, how to find light in the dark, still echo today. The catacombs don't offer answers, they simply whisper in Agatha's ochre prayers and stolen saints' voices that faith, like these tunnels, has always been a labyrinth. And sometimes the way forward is written over the footsteps of those who came before. Perched on a hill overlooking Marsaxlokk Bay, Tas Silg isn't just one temple. It's a palimpsest of devotion, a sacred site where civilizations layered their gods like pages in a book. Walk its ruins today and you'll tread on Phoenician coins, Roman mosaics, and Byzantine crosses, all built atop a megalithic temple older than memory. The most telling clue lies in the walls themselves. Look closely and you'll spot massive stone blocks, their edges rounded by time, their surfaces marked with prehistoric spiral carvings, now repurposed as foundations for later shrines. These aren't just recycled materials, they're spiritual heirlooms, each culture grafting its beliefs onto the bones of what came before. The Phoenicians left the most startling mark. Around 800 BCE, they transformed the site into a sanctuary for Astarte, their goddess of war and fertility. Archaeologists unearthed stone anchors, symbols of her maritime power, embedded in the walls alongside fragments of ceramic votive masks with hollow eyes, meant to channel her presence during rituals. But here's the twist: the Phoenicians didn't erase the past. they inscribed Astarte's name directly onto the older temple's megaliths, as if threading her divinity into the island's ancient energy. One limestone slab bears both her crescent moon symbol and a Neolithic spiral, a cosmic handshake across millennia. When the Romans arrived, they rededicated the site to Juno, their own mother goddess, yet kept the essence of Astarte's worship intact. Diggers found a cache of bronze figurines, Juno's regal likeness perched beside Astarte's curvaceous forms, as if the two deities coexisted in silent harmony. Even the rituals blurred. Roman priests burned incense in the same courtyard where Phoenician priestesses once poured libations, the stone altars stained with centuries of offerings. Then came the Byzantines. In the 6th century, they built a monastery atop the ruins, its chapel walls etched with crosses that overlap pagan carvings like shadows. Beneath the nave, workers discovered a hidden pit filled with shattered Astarte statues deliberately decapitated, yet carefully buried, not discarded. A final act of reverence or an attempt to neuter their power, the answer might lie in the monastery's most peculiar feature. Its floor mosaic includes an ancient spiral motif lifted from the original temple, encircling a Christian Cairo symbol. The message is clear. Even as faiths changed, Tas Silg remained holy ground, its magic too potent to erase. Standing here at sunset, watching the light gild stones that have witnessed 4,000 years of prayer, you realize Tas Silg isn't about replacement. It's about resonance, an unbroken thread of awe twisting through time like the spirals on those reused megaliths, reminding us that the divine wears many names, but the longing behind them stays the same. At the southern tip of Malta, where rugged cliffs meet the sea, lies a cave unlike any other Gardalam, a gaping maw in the limestone filled with layers of bones so thick, early excavators had to tunnel through them like miners. This isn't just a fossil site, it's a time capsule preserving the remains of creatures that seem ripped from myth. Dwarf elephants no taller than a man, pygmy hippos the size of pigs, and giant swans with wingspans stretching nearly 10 feet, all long vanished from the earth. But the real mystery isn't the animals themselves. It's what lies between their bones: flint knives, charred hearths, and hand-shaped tools, all mixed into the same ancient strata. The discovery sparked a debate that still divides archaeologists. On one side, the hunter's camp theory. Early humans arriving on Malta around 7,000 years ago found these miniature megafauna easy prey, slaughtering them into extinction. Cut marks on some bones seem to tell that story, precise grooves where stone blades scraped away flesh. But then there are the anomalies: hippo skulls arranged in careful circles, their jaws propped open as if mid-roar. Elephant bones stacked in neat piles, untouched by butchering tools. A single hippo femur polished smooth by human hands and placed upright in a niche as if displayed like a relic. Local legends add another layer. Folktales speak of El Ganella, a ghostly figure said to guard the cave, her whispers warning against disturbing the sleeping giants. Some researchers suggest these stories could be distorted memories of a prehistoric taboo, a cultural prohibition against hunting creatures seen as sacred. The cave's very name, Gardalam, translates to Cave of Darkness, but an older interpretation might be Cave of the Spirits, hinting at a time when these animals weren't just food, but ancestors or even deities. The climate paints an even stranger picture. When humans first arrived, Malta was a savanna-like expanse, rich with springs, a paradise for the dwarf elephants and hippos that had evolved there over millennia. Then, abruptly, the weather shifted. Pollen samples show the land turning arid, the water sources drying up. Did humans deliver the final blow to an already dying ecosystem, or did they arrive as witnesses to an extinction already in motion? The cave's deepest layers hold a clue, a thin band of sterile soil devoid of fossils separating the animal bones from the human artifacts. A gap in time, or a deliberate pause, as if the first Maltese hesitated before stepping into a world where giants still walked. Standing in Gardalam's cool gloom, running your fingers over a hippo's tooth larger than your palm, the question lingers like the cave's own echoes. Were these creatures hunted, worshipped, or something in between? The bones don't give easy answers, but in their silent testimony, they whisper of a time when the line between sustenance and sacrament was as blurred as the shadows on these ancient walls. High on the slopes above Ġgantija Bay, a cluster of rock-cut tombs slices into the limestone like a silent choir facing the dawn. These aren't random graves, their entrances align with surgical precision to catch the first light of the winter solstice sunrise, as if the dead themselves were waiting for the sun's annual return. Step inside one at dawn on that shortest day of the year, and you'll witness a spectacle. Sunlight funnels down the narrow passage, striking the rear wall with a golden blade of light that lingers just long enough to feel deliberate. Archaeologists argue these alignments weren't accidental. The tomb's architects carved them to function as celestial clocks, marking time not in hours but in generations. But the real revelation came when excavators uncovered tiny clay figurines nestled beside skeletal remains, statuettes of a plump woman curled on her side, eyes closed as if in peaceful slumber. The so-called Sleeping Lady of Malta appears in tombs across the island, her presence so consistent she's become a symbol of Neolithic death rites. At Ġgantija, she's often cradled in niches directly in the path of the solstice light, her rounded form bathed in sunlight once a year. Some researchers believe she represents eternal rest, a guardian ushering souls into the afterlife. Others see her as a deity of rebirth, her posture mirroring the fetal position, a promise that death, like winter, is just a pause before renewal. The tomb's design supports this cyclical view. Unlike later Bronze Age graves where bones were stacked and forgotten, Ġgantija's chambers show signs of repeated visitation. Skeletal remains were rearranged over centuries, skulls grouped together in carved recesses, long bones bundled like sacred kindling. This wasn't mere burial, it was active ancestor veneration, a dialogue between the living and the dead timed to the sun's resurrection each December. Even the tomb walls whisper of this bond, patches of red ochre, handprints pressed into the soft limestone, and spirals echoing those in Malta's temples, suggesting the deceased remained active participants in the community's spiritual life. What chills the spine is the precision of the celestial choreography. The tomb's alignment doesn't just mark the solstice, it accounts for the sun's slow drift over millennia due to Earth's axial wobble. By carving the entrance at a slightly oblique angle, the builders ensured the alignment would hold true for generations. This implies an oral tradition so meticulous, it could preserve astronomical knowledge across centuries without written records. Standing in those tombs at dawn, watching light creep toward a sleeping lady placed there 5,000 years ago, you realize these weren't just graves. They were thresholds where the dead watched the sun return as steadfastly as the living, bound together in a cycle as old as the limestone itself. High on Malta's Ġgantija Ridge, where the Mediterranean wind carries whispers of forgotten centuries, the Ġgantija Nymphaeum hides a scandal in its crumbling stones. At first glance, this Roman-era ruin seems unremarkable, a series of rock-cut chambers and water channels worn smooth by time, but look closer and the walls tell a different story. Faded fresco fragments cling stubbornly to the limestone, their colors muted but their imagery unmistakable. Entwined limbs, suggestive silhouettes, and scenes of revelry so vivid they would make a Victorian scholar blush. This wasn't just a resting place for travelers, it was a sanctuary of sensuality, a site where pleasure and worship blurred into something far more provocative. The controversy begins with the water. The Nymphaeum's name hints at its original function, a shrine to the nymphs, those capricious spirits of springs and rivers revered for their beauty and fertility. The Romans often built such grottos as peaceful retreats, where the sound of trickling water soothed the senses, but here the architecture takes a lurid turn. Excavators found not just pools but raised platforms carved into alcoves, their surfaces stained with remnants of perfumed oils. Nearby, a mosaic floor, now fragmentary, once depicted dolphins leaping amid waves, a common motif in Roman bathhouses and brothels. The most damning evidence, a cache of tiny clay lamps, their wicks blackened by centuries of use, each decorated with erotic scenes straight from Pompeii's most infamous pleasure houses. Then there are the frescoes themselves. Early British antiquarians who documented the site in the 1800s deliberately obscured the more explicit panels in their sketches, sketching draped figures over nude ones or omitting certain scenes entirely. One particularly prudish report describes festive gatherings of a spiritual nature, glossing over the fact that these gatherings included figures reclining in poses better suited to a Roman drinking party than a religious ceremony. Only a handful of unrestored fragments survive today, a woman's arched back here, a grinning satyr there, but their original vibrancy still bleeds through. The pigments were mixed with expensive crushed lapis and malachite, suggesting this was no roadside inn but a destination for the elite, where indulgence was an art form. But was it sacred or profane? The answer might lie in the Romans' own contradictions. To them, pleasure wasn't divorced from divinity, it was a pathway to it. Sites like Baiae in Italy blended hot springs, temple worship, and hedonistic frolics without a second thought. At Ġgantija, the presence of small votive statues, miniature Venus figures, and phallic charms hints at rituals where physical ecstasy merged with spiritual ecstasy. Even the water channels have a dual purpose. Some scholars argue they weren't just for ambience but for ritual cleansing between encounters. The real mystery isn't what happened here. It's why we're so determined to look away. The Victorians buried Ġgantija's secrets beneath layers of moralizing prose, and even modern guides often downplay its racier aspects. But the stones don't lie. In their faded pigments and suggestive curves, they preserve a truth about Roman Malta, one where the divine didn't just tolerate human desire, it celebrated it. Standing in those ruins at dusk, watching the last light catch on a frescoed thigh half lost to time, you realize the nymphaeum's power isn't in its controversy. It's in its honesty, a reminder that history, like desire, refuses to be neatly categorized. Some stories aren't meant to be cleaned up, they're meant to be felt. Tucked away in Malta's rugged northwest, Colla el Bajda's White Cave yawns open like a wound in the earth, a sinkhole so stark against the surrounding limestone that locals have long whispered it's a gateway to something far stranger. By day, it's an unassuming geological oddity, its chalky walls streaked with centuries of weather stains, but descend into its depths and the air shifts. The temperature drops unnaturally fast. The silence becomes so thick it rings in your ears. This isn't just a cave. It's a place where timelines blur, where prehistoric graves share space with modern-day UFO lore, and where the military once staged an excavation so secretive, not even the island's archivists know what they were digging for. The oldest layer of the mystery lies beneath the rubble. Neolithic bone fragments, some human, some unidentifiable, have surfaced in the cave's deepest chambers, mixed with shattered pottery and flint tools. Unlike the orderly burials at Zagra or the Hypogeum, these remains are scattered as if tossed in haste, their skulls often crushed or bearing odd perforations. One particularly chilling find, a child's femur, meticulously polished and etched with a series of dots that mirror the Pleiades star cluster. Archaeologists debate whether these markings are ritualistic or something more pragmatic, a celestial map for navigation perhaps, or a tally of lives lost. But folklore offers a darker interpretation. The dots represent lights seen by those who ventured too deep, a warning passed down through generations. Then there's the 20th century enigma. In 1987, without warning or explanation, the Maltese military cordoned off the area for 3 weeks. Witnesses reported trucks hauling away crates under tarps, while soldiers in unmarked uniforms barred locals from even glancing at the site. No official records of the dig exist. No artifacts were logged into museums. The only trace, a declassified US Air Force memo from the same year, mentioning anomalous readings over Malta's northwest coast, a detail that resurfaced in civilian UFO reports describing pulsing blue lights near Cala El Bajda on the nights of the military's operation. The cave's modern reputation only deepens the intrigue. Fishermen swear they've seen orbs of light emerge from its mouth at dawn, skimming the waves before vanishing. Hikers tell of cameras malfunctioning near the sinkhole's rim, their batteries draining instantly, but the most unsettling accounts come from those who have braved the interior. Explorers describe a hum that vibrates through the rock at irregular intervals, sometimes strong enough to ripple the water in stagnant pools. One team even captured an audio recording, a series of subsonic pulses that, when sped up, resemble a distorted human voice uttering phrases in a language linguists can't place. What threads these fragments together? Perhaps nothing, perhaps everything. The Neolithic bones, the military's secrecy, the lights in the sky. They might be disconnected curiosities or pieces of a puzzle we're not meant to solve. But one detail lingers. The cave's Maltese name, Cala El Bajda, doesn't just mean white cave. In an older dialect, it translates to the hill of the call. Whether that call was meant to summon the dead, the divine, or something else entirely, the stones aren't telling. And after centuries of whispers, maybe some questions are better left unanswered. Towering silently beside the weathered ruins of a Roman bath complex, the Ġgantija monolith cuts an isolated figure, a solitary sentinel of stone that seems to guard secrets older than the empire that once bathed here. This weathered pillar, standing just over 8 feet tall, bears no carvings, no inscriptions, nothing to declare its purpose. Yet its very presence whispers of something deeper. Positioned precisely where a natural spring bubbles up from the limestone, a rarity on this arid island, the monolith appears to mark the intersection of two powerful forces, water and earth energy. Ley line hunters have long been drawn to this site. When mapped, the monolith forms a near-perfect straight line with Gozo's Ġgantija dot above Ġgantija Temples over 20 miles to the northwest, an alignment too precise to dismiss as coincidence. Some researchers argue it's a waypoint in a Neolithic energy grid, connecting sacred sites across the archipelago. Others note its alignment with the summer solstice sunrise, when dawn light slices through a V-shaped notch in distant hills to illuminate the stone's eastern face, a phenomenon mirrored at Ġgantija dot above Ġgantija's own solar alignments. Could this lonely pillar be a forgotten link in a chain of celestial observation, a backup marker for when fog obscured the grand temple's views? The Romans, ever practical, seemed to recognize the site's significance. Their bath complex wasn't built atop the monolith but carefully around it, its hot pools fed by the same spring the stone may have once sanctified. Excavators found bronze votives' miniature arms and legs, tucked into crevices at the monolith's base, offerings left by bathers seeking healing centuries after its original builders vanished. Even the name holds clues. Ġgantija translates to spring of the olive tree, evoking themes of renewal and sacred groves, but the most tantalizing detail lies beneath the surface. Ground-penetrating radar reveals a network of collapsed tunnels radiating outward, their courses mirroring the cart ruts found elsewhere in Malta. Some lead toward the coast, others vanish into the hills, potential proof this was no isolated marker but part of a wider ritual landscape. One narrow passage dives straight down, terminating at what sonar suggests is a submerged chamber. Could this be another hypogeum waiting to be uncovered? Or something else entirely, a sealed repository for whatever the ancients believed flowed through these ley lines? Standing beside the monolith at twilight, watching the last light gild its pitted surface, you're struck by its stubborn silence. Unlike Malta's grand temples, this stone offers no carvings to decode, no altars to interpret. Its power lies in what it refuses to tell us, a reminder that some monuments weren't meant to explain but to endure. And as the stars emerge, tracing that invisible line to Ġgantija with dot above Ġgantija's distant silhouette, you realize this isn't just a stone. It's a question carved in limestone, waiting 5,000 years for an answer. On the windswept heights of Mnajdra Bay, where waves crash against Malta's rocky shores, an 18th-century coastal battery hides a secret in plain sight. Built by the Knights of St. John to defend against Ottoman raids, this stern fortification seems like a relic of Malta's Christian era until you notice the massive, out-of-place stone embedded in its walls. Weathered and rounded by millennia, this block isn't military rubble. It's a fragment of something far older, salvaged from a Neolithic temple the Knights deliberately dismantled. The stone's edges still bear faint spiral carvings, their curves clashing with the fort's rigid geometry, a silent protest against its repurposing. This wasn't casual recycling. The Knights systematically quarried Malta's megalithic temples, using their sacred stones to build churches, forts, and harbors. At Mnajdra, they chose this particular slab for a grimly poetic reason. It once formed part of an altar where prehistoric worshippers celebrated the sea's abundance. Now it was pressed into service to repel the very waters it once sanctified. The Knights' campaign against Malta's pagan past wasn't just practical, it was ideological. By erasing these sites, they severed the island's spiritual roots, rewriting its identity in the image of their cross. But the megalith fought back. Positioned near the battery's gun emplacement, the stone began to crack under the recoil of cannon fire, as if resisting its new role. Local lore claims that on stormy nights, the carving spirals glow faintly, humming with a sound like distant chanting. Whether legend or coincidence, the Knights eventually abandoned the battery, though not before whitewashing the stone to hide its markings, a futile attempt to mute its ancient voice. What they couldn't silence was the persistence of memory. Fishermen still leave offerings of seashells at the base of the wall, a folk tradition echoing the stone's original purpose. Modern archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar recently traced the fragment to a destroyed temple just inland, one the Knights had buried beneath a vineyard. The vines, curiously, never thrived there, their roots twisting away from the hidden megaliths below as if repelled by some unseen force. Standing before Mnadra's hybrid wall, where cannon scars meet 5,000-year-old carvings, you're witnessing more than repurposed stone. You're seeing a battlefield of beliefs where one civilization tried to bury another and failed. The Knights may have claimed the island's body, but its soul still whispers through the cracks. In the quiet village of Naxar, tucked between modern houses and sun-baked fields, stands a solitary menhir known as the Stone of Tears. This weathered pillar of limestone, twice the height of a grown man, has watched over the land for millennia, but its true mystery lies in the stories whispered about it. Locals swear that during the driest summers, when the earth cracks and the wells run shallow, dark streaks appear down the stone's face like bloody tears seeping from the rock itself. The oldest villagers still cross themselves when passing it, murmuring about curses and ancient pacts broken long ago. At the base of the menhir, a shallow basin is carved into the bedrock, its edges smoothed by countless hands over centuries. Archaeologists can't agree whether this depression was shaped by human tools or the slow drip of rainwater channeled by the stone's unique grain, but the placement is too deliberate to ignore. The basin aligns perfectly with the setting sun on the autumn equinox, catching the last golden light in a way that makes the water inside, or the stains left behind, glow like liquid fire. Theories about its purpose span the practical and the paranormal. Some argue it was a prehistoric rain gauge designed to measure water levels during Malta's unpredictable dry seasons. Others point to similar basins in Sardinia and Crete, used for libations, offerings of wine, milk, or blood poured to appease thirsty gods, but the most chilling clue comes from medieval records. In 1624, during a famine so severe people resorted to eating wild grasses, A Jesuit priest wrote of witnessing villagers gathering at the stone, slicing their palms and letting their blood mingle with the rainwater in the basin. They called it feeding the earth, he noted, as if the land itself could hunger. Modern science offers a tamer explanation. Geologists suggest the tears are iron oxide deposits leaching from the limestone during humidity shifts, their reddish streaks coinciding with droughts. Yet even they can't explain why the phenomenon occurs only on this menhir, despite identical stone found across Malta. And then there's the sound. On still nights when the wind dies, those who brave the stone's proximity report a faint humming, like a low note vibrating through the rock. Instruments have detected ultrasonic frequencies emanating from its core frequencies known to induce unease in humans, the kind of subconscious dread that breeds legends. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between. The Stone of Tears may not weep blood, but it does weep something, a convergence of geology, human ritual, and the raw power of belief. Standing before it, you can almost feel the weight of all those whispered prayers, all those hands that touched the basin hoping to coax life from a parched earth. It's a monument not just to Malta's past, but to the enduring human dialogue with forces we can't control, carved in stone and stained with centuries of longing. Hidden in the cliffs of Dingley, Gar Murdam's rough-hewn chambers tell a tale of two faiths locked in silent struggle across the centuries. At first glance, it's a typical hermit's cave, a retreat where medieval monks once scratched crosses into the walls as they prayed. But tilt your lantern just right and older shadows emerge. Beneath those Christian symbols, faint grooves twist into spirals and crescent shapes patterns that mirror the sacred carvings in Malta's Neolithic temples. The question isn't just who lived here, it's what they were trying to erase or preserve. The Knights Templar connection begins with a single, weathered inscription near the cave's entrance, a cross pate, their signature emblem, flanked by a date, 1412. This wasn't just graffiti. Templar records confirm a small contingent sailed to Malta after their order's suppression in 1314, seeking refuge with the island's Hospitaller rulers. But why choose this remote cave? The answer might lie in the walls themselves. Geological scans reveal unnatural voids behind sections of carved crosses, hidden niches that match descriptions of Templar vaults where they stored sacred relics. Local legends speak of a lightless chamber where the knights guarded a cup that made no shadow, a phrase that tantalizingly echoes their rumored possession of the Holy Grail. Then there's the pagan layer. Archaeoacoustics expert Dr. Linda Enix discovered that the cave's spiral carved sections resonate at 64 Hz, the same frequency as the Hypogeum's oracle chamber. Even more startling, the medieval crosses were chiseled precisely where these acoustic hotspots occur, as if the monks were deliberately silencing the wall's hum. Were they stamping out a pagan sound ritual or harnessing it for their own worship? The cave's layout suggests both. The main chamber aligns with the winter solstice sunrise, just like Malta's older temples, but a later carved altar redirects this light to illuminate a fresco of St. Paul, a symbolic takeover of the ancient solar alignment. The most provocative evidence comes from ultraviolet imaging. Beneath layers of candle soot and calcium deposits, earlier paintings emerge, red ochre handprints, identical to those in Neolithic burial sites, now partially obscured by a medieval Madonna and Child. The overlap isn't random. The Christian figures were painted directly over the handprints' palms as if claiming their spiritual energy. Even the cave's water seepage follows this contest of faiths. A natural spring drips onto a carved pagan fertility symbol, but monks later channeled the water through a stone cruciform trough, baptizing the old magic drop by drop. Standing in Gar Murdam's twilight, you're not just in a cave, you're inside a palimpsest of devotion, where every scratch and painting is a battle line in Malta's eternal war of beliefs. The stones don't care who wins, they only remember. Beneath the sun-bleached stones of Malta's ancient temples, whispers persist of a hidden world, a labyrinth of tunnels so vast it could rewrite the island's history. The so-called Malta Tunnel conspiracy alleges that megalithic sites like Hagar Qim, Mnajdra, and the Hypogeum aren't isolated marvels, but nodes in a subterranean network stretching miles beneath the Mediterranean. Archaeologists dismiss it as fantasy, pointing to the island's fragile limestone geology, which they argue couldn't support such extensive hollow spaces without collapse. But the testimonies of those who claim to have ventured into these shadows tell a different story, one of cavernous halls, carved archways, and artifacts that defy classification. Take the account of diver and explorer Chris Agius, who in 2012 swore he discovered a flooded tunnel near Comino's coastline, its walls marked with spirals identical to those in Tarxian's temples. He described a passage that narrowed abruptly, then opened into a dry chamber filled with pottery shards and a stone slab etched with constellations. Before he could document further, his guide rope snapped, forcing him to retreat. The university's maritime archaeology team later scanned the area, finding anomalies but no definitive proof. Then there's the infamous 1987 incident, when construction workers near Rabat allegedly broke into a void beneath a housing project. One laborer, Salvu Mifsud, described descending into a corridor lined with niches holding elongated skulls, only for the site to be sealed by authorities within hours. No official report was ever filed. Skeptics argue these stories conflate natural fissures with human engineering. Malta's soft limestone is prone to forming caves and sinkholes, some bearing coincidental resemblance to carved structures. The cart ruts that plunge off cliffs, for example, may simply be erosion channels from ancient rainwater, but conspiracy theorists counter with a compelling detail. The Hypogeum's own walls bear tool marks suggesting its builders expanded a pre-existing cave system. Could they have done the same elsewhere? Ground-penetrating radar surveys near Ġgantija have detected voids up to 30 feet deep, though researchers attribute them to collapsed cisterns from later periods. The most chilling twist comes from declassified British colonial documents. A 1952 memo from the Royal Engineers references an extensive subterranean feature beneath Valletta, discovered during wartime tunnel excavations. The report describes a blocked passageway with megalithic-style masonry, but concludes dismissively, likely Roman-era modifications. No further investigation was noted. For tunnel believers, this is smoking gun evidence of a cover-up, a pattern they say repeats whenever modern progress threatens to expose Malta's buried secrets. Whether fact or folklore, the Malta tunnel theory forces us to confront a tantalizing possibility. What if the island's greatest marvels aren't the temples we can see, but the ones we've yet to discover? Until someone maps these rumored passageways, the truth remains underground, waiting in the dark, just beyond the reach of our shovels and skepticism. From the towering stones of Ġgantija to the echoing chambers of the Hypogeum, Malta's ancient structures defy simple explanation. This tiny island, no larger than a city, holds more prehistoric mysteries per square mile than anywhere else on Earth, a testament to a civilization that mastered astronomy, acoustics, and engineering millennia before modern science. Think about it, temples aligned to solstice sunrises with laser precision, underground chambers humming at frequencies that alter consciousness, and cart ruts that plunge into the sea like pathways to a drowned world. These aren't just ruins, they're fragments of a lost language carved in limestone and waiting to be deciphered. What makes Malta's enigmas so compelling isn't just their age, it's their density. Nowhere else can you walk from a 5,000-year-old temple to a Roman catacomb in minutes, each layer of history whispering a different question. Who were the people who built these monuments? Why did they vanish without a trace? And how did they achieve feats that still stump engineers today? The answers might lie in the island's very soil, where every trench dug for a new hotel or road risks uncovering another piece of the puzzle. But here's the thing, these mysteries aren't locked away in textbooks, they're alive. Stand in Mnajdra at dawn on the equinox, and you'll feel sunlight slice through stone like it did 5,000 years ago. Whisper in the Hypogeum's oracle chamber, and your voice will twist into something unearthly. These places don't just belong to archaeologists, they belong to anyone willing to listen. So if you've ever felt the pull of the unknown, book a flight, walk these temples at sunset, touch the same stones that ancient priests once did. And when you hear the wind hum through above Ġgantija's ruins, ask yourself, are we looking at the past or a message we're still learning to read? As the sun dips below Gozo's cliffs, painting the oldest free-standing structures on Earth in gold and shadow, one truth becomes clear. Malta's greatest monument isn't any single temple or tomb. It's the sheer weight of questions they leave unanswered, a challenge flung across the centuries, daring us to keep searching. The stones have kept their secrets this long, but maybe, just maybe, the next clue is waiting for you.